Terence Crawford finally reacts to being stripped. I just want to see you strip of the IBF championship title. And somehow he blames Errol Spence Jr fans for being mad. I'm going to break it down in this video. Stay tuned. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. So the moment the boxing world has been waiting for, an actual first response from Terence Crawford after being stripped. So I've noticed almost a pattern with Terence Crawford. When something like, let's say a fight's on, and there's a fighter where he doesn't necessarily like, let's say Jermell Charlo, where there's been some back and forth beef. He's fighting Canelo. Crawford won't really say anything in the lead up to help promote the fight, or, he won't trash talk too much. Like, it's like he doesn't want to promote the fight or whatever. But then as soon as the outcome, Canelo beat Charlo convincingly, then he went to Twitter and he's like, I knew you were going to fail and, all this type of stuff. Ha ha. This was embarrassing. You laid an egg, yada, yada, yada. So it was a bit surprising that Terence Crawford was not quick to react, because he seemingly gets on social media any other time. I remember when people were saying he ducked Errol Spence in the build-up when the negotiations fell out. He did a IG live, and, there's this tweet storm. So him being stripped was pretty big news, at least in boxing and YouTube. And he was kind of slow to react, which is the point I'm making. But he finally responded, not necessarily the response that I expected, but we'll read it. Terence Crawford says, quote, "I see a lot of Spence fans mad at me and jumping on Boots' sack now. I love it," crying emoji. "This is the same ish I got and heard for 5 years. I was scared, this and that. It's okay, everybody, just accept it. I'm great and y'all mad about it." Very, very weird comment from Terence Crawford. So he gets stripped from the IBF. Somehow, some way, he blames Errol Spence fans. So, I mean, maybe you guys can do a better job of making that make sense. Somehow, in his brain or his thought process, this all relates back to people not wanting to admit he's great. I mean, it's really bizarre at this point, some of the statements that we're hearing from Crawford. From my view, Crawford is a terrific fighter. I've always given him props on my channel for being that terrific fighter. I currently have him #1 pound for pound. When he beat Errol Spence, I said, hey, I was wrong. He beat Errol Spence. But to react in this way, like, you're not saying nothing about the IBF. Do you think it's fair or not? Literally, the first sentence says, "I see a lot of Spence fans." So the problem I have with stuff like this is, how does one quantify? How do you qualify that statement, right? How do you somehow, like, you're being stripped, people want to see you fight Boots. How do you equate this to Errol Spence fans? Like, why does it have to be Errol Spence? Like, Boots doesn't have his own fans and people just want to see the fight, or boxing fans? Like, what makes you believe that these are just Jaron Ennis, people who don't like Jaron Ennis, but somehow Errol Spence fans? So that seems like a bit of denial to somehow blame it on Errol Spence fans and saying they're mad. You know what I mean? For example, I know plenty of people from Philly, like literally boxing fans from Philly. Jaron Ennis is from Philly. They're not over, like, obsessive Errol Spence fans, may not even be Errol Spence fans at all, but they support their hometown fighter, Jaron Ennis, being a Philly fighter, doing his thing, showing shades of Roy Jones Jr., etc. So they have nothing to do with Errol Spence fans, so to speak. Like, again, I know a lot of Philly fans, like Philly boxing fans, and they support all from Danny Garcia to B-Hop and, brother Nassim, rest in peace, They like boxing, but they, are going to support the home team kind of thing, right? So they're fans of Boots Ennis. It has literally nothing to do with Errol Spence fans and being mad and denying his greatness. The other thing is, Crawford, what he did in this statement, he says, Errol Spence fans mad at me and jumping on Boots' sack. Like, that is just, it's almost like a juvenile and immature type of thought process or like ideology. There's people in boxing who are just fans of the sport. They like Crawford, they like Boots, they like Errol Spence. They just want to see great fights, right? I know because I'm living proof. There's no horse in the race. Yeah, of course, there's certain fighters you root for and things like that. But, I like all the top welterweights, to be honest. Pause. So it's just a weird sentiment from Terence Crawford that Spence fans are mad and now jump ship to Boots Ennis. Like, how do you attribute this to Spence fans? Again, very weird. Jaron Ennis has his own career. He has his own path. The IBF, they're the one. He did an interview recently, and he said, this is out of my hands. Of course, we wanted to fight for the belt, and we still want to fight Terence Crawford, right? We still down for that. But I'm a champion now, and the IBF made their decision. They followed their rules, and it is what it is. So he didn't like really overly rejoice in the manner, because I seen some people say, oh, how could Boots be happy with this? I mean, he's a champion. It was bound to come. It was bound to happen. Now, I want to go in depth with this. And if you guys want me to go in depth with this topic, just type unpacked and I'll make it unpacked, because Terence Crawford's trainer, Bomac, he also came out in the same day Crawford put out the tweet, which is today, that you guys should be watching this video. And Bomac said that the same thing Crawford said. He said, we're not interested in fighting Jaron Ennis because it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. What's the point? Something to this effect of, it's not a big fight. Crawford's looking for big fights only at this stage of his career. So if you want that unpacked video, just type unpacked or hashtag unpacked. And enough of you guys, if you leave that comment, then that'll notify me to make that unpacked video regarding Bomac's comments, Jaron Ennis, Terence Crawford, and again, what was said. But just to paraphrase, Bomac basically said that we're not interested in the Terence Crawford versus Jaron Ennis fight. Now, the other thing that in this single tweet that doesn't really look good for Terence Crawford is he's saying people are jumping on Boots' sack and things like that. People just want to see you fight him. We don't care about all the like other this and that, and who cares if you feel people are against you or whatever. People just want to see the fight. This man has your belt, and it's a great fight. I don't know what Bomac and his team why they're so anti it. People just want to see the fight, but Terence Crawford is not saying anything about the actual fight. He's blaming Errol Spence fans and saying this and that, and I just find it a bit weird. And if you guys want that unpacked video, I could break it down further. But he complained about moving up to the welterweight category and not getting any looks. He's like, oh, people are afraid to fight me. I've been calling out everybody, yada, yada, yada. Is that not what Jaron Ennis is doing? And then you're doing the same thing that you complained that Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman and Errol Spence and whoever else you named, you're doing the same thing you said that they were doing. Jaron is hungry. He's the fighter of the moment. He's been looking special. He's been looking sensational. And Crawford is saying, oh, I got the same ish I heard for 5 years. But each fight and each fighter is a case-by-case basis. You beat Errol Spence. No one's taking that from you. The pictures right here shows you that, right? But Errol Spence has his own trajectory. He got in accidents, detached retina, none of which are applicable to Jaron Ennis. So, yes, you beat Sean Porter, you beat Errol Spence, you beat Ray Beltran, you beat whoever you beat. That really has nothing to do with Jaron Ennis because he's his own entity, his own brand, his own style, etc. So, to me, this is all filler, saying, oh, I heard this same song and dance and I've heard this before. I mean, if that's the case, then Floyd Mayweather, his resume has been great for a while. So he could just say, oh, why should I fight Canelo? He don't mean nothing. And, you know, I've heard this before with Ricky Hatton and Marquez and da-da-da-da. Why should I fight Pacquiao? I heard it with Canelo and De La Hoya, and then just list all the people you beat and your accomplishments. So it's a bit weird, to be honest, the stance from Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford has always publicly kind of acquitted himself as he wants all the smoke, and he ain't never paid no step aside money. He would never pay step aside money, and he didn't like being backburnered when he got to the division. But in a way, you're really kind of doing the same thing to Jaron Ennis. You're saying, oh, the fight doesn't matter. I mean, this is some of the same things that Keith Thurman was saying to you. I interviewed Keith Thurman in New York, and Keith Thurman was saying stuff about Crawford, who's he beat, because this was before Errol Spence. This was before Sean Porter. This was when Crawford was fighting on Top Rank, and, you know, the names were like Jose Benavidez after he'd been shot in the leg, things like that, and Jeff Horn. And he was like, who's this guy beat? I'm looking for the big fights. I want to fight Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, blah, blah, blah. That's what Keith Thurman was saying. And again, it's like Crawford also recently took shots at Keith Thurman and Danny Garcia, and he was like, oh, y'all didn't give me a chance, so I'll never give you a chance. But Jaron Ennis that's not his era. So he has nothing to do with those. So basically the point I'm making is Terence Crawford said he doesn't want to fight Jermell Charlo after a poor showing with Canelo. He says him and his team said they don't really want to fight Errol Spence again. And then he said he'll never give Danny Garcia or Keith Thurman a shot because they didn't give him a shot. So he's going to, you know, be petty and hold a grudge. Yordenis Ugas just lost to Barrios, and that's a guy that beat him in the amateurs. So no one wants to see at this point Ugas versus Crawford. And then there's really no reason for you not to be looking at Jaron Ennis as a contender, but your team has stated that it's not really a fight that you'll get up for or interest you. And instead you're trying to write it off as, oh, I heard the same thing for the last 5 years. Bit weird, especially coming from Crawford, who, you know, kind of repelled that behavior when he moved up to the division. But it is what it is. That's Crawford's response. Somehow he's blaming Errol Spence fans for being mad at him because he's great. Let me know what you guys think. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Best in the business, and it's not even close. And I'm out. Yiddy.